For this session, I wrote 36 words. For this session, I wrote 76 words, and my week's total word count is 755 words. I finished up my home workout. It was nice to get some body movement in, some blood flow after sitting for my writing session this morning, which turned out very, very well. I am so pleased. I managed to weave in some concepts about infinity into this segment, and I'm very, very pleased with how it turned out. Today is Wednesday. I am filming this big portion of my blog a day in advance. I usually film on Thursdays and Mondays, and then I publish my blogs on Tuesdays and Fridays. And I do this because I want to post as close to real time as possible. That way, those of you who are writing along with me can really feel like we're doing this together. Given that tomorrow is Thanksgiving, I will not have time to film, so here we are. I am still getting my writing session in though. I'm writing every single day. I have not broken my daily streak in 150 plus days. My streak will continue until I'm finished with this manuscript. That said, maintaining this streak is a very feasible activity for me because I do not have any word count constraints. I simply write intuitively. I stop when I feel good about my segment, and then I carry on with the rest of my day. Today I had plans to film my extended notes on lesson number 2 of my first self-published book, It's Okay to Burn Bridges. However, upon pulling my fairy oracle, I pulled the Boggle Fairy, and if you can read it, it says, "Conscientious completion brings results. Prophetic imaginings become real." It made me rethink my plans in the manner that at first it seemed like it was a great idea for me to do a weekly series reviewing each lesson in my book. The original idea was that I would dedicate one video a week to writing updates and strategies and then insights, and then the second video to the extended notes. But then, upon contemplating Fairy Oracle a bit further, I realized that this probably is not a good setup for me. I realized that I am someone who needs the minimum viable structure in place and then plenty of freedom around that. My husband just got back from jiu-jitsu and he brought me my caffeine fix, so brief intermission. Anyways, vlogging for me is already a bit challenging, though I have more flow and rhythm with it. But I realize that if I put too many rigid plans in place with it and I don't allow myself full creative expression, it's going to become something I dread. So though in theory I really like the idea of showing up once a week and doing my extended note series, I think I have to be more intuitive about that. And this is actually a major realization for me because it puts into perspective my tendencies to prefer doing things in rigid ways that may not actually work out for me in the long haul. And I think about this notion of minimum viable structure in the context of my writing process as well, and what I've learned is that works for me. That said, if I just blow through this plan without conscientious consideration to get my weekly vlogs done, I'm not gonna have enjoyment over it, and I'm going to miss out on the intuitive opportunities to explore the space of vlogging more for myself. And even though I do a pretty simple vlog because I'm not a cinematographer and I'm not personally interested in doing that myself, like I appreciate it for other people, but that's not how I prefer to use my energy. Bottom line is, I realize that I often fall into the trap of having these great grand plans with the best of intentions that then set me up eventually toward burnout and dread. And so I'm glad that I had a moment to rethink all of that and prevent my course into a tendency that I'm very, very apt to fall into without my conscious realization. So that all said, I'm definitely just going to take a more intuitive approach to talking about my first book. And for the rest of this vlog, I want to share the books I have picked up for my personal collection. First up, we have some Goodwill finds. I found a book called An Irish Country Christmas by Patrick Taylor. And I have been wanting a vibey Christmassy book. So this is definitely something I'm gonna read, or I'm gonna try to get around to reading in December. I also found this book called The Making of a Poem, a Norton anthology of poetic forms. So it's a collection of poetry, and then it also has some instruction on poetry. And lastly, from Goodwill, I found a copy of My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. And it's a book I've been wanting to read for a while. I've been very curious about it, so it's a sign, I think, for me to get into this at some point next year. I picked up The Books of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin. I'm not really sure how to say her last name, but this is the complete collection of the Earthsea books. So I'm very excited to get into this. I plan on reading it probably after I finish Brandon Sanderson, at least the first book, which I'm making some steady progress in. And lastly, I am so excited about this. I picked up at auction this set. It was a brand new set, the In Search of a Lost Time collection by Marcel Proust. Over the year, I've been very back and forth about how to continue my journey in Proust, because I really entered it through the Penguin Classic version, the newer translation. And hold on, let me just get that copy really quick. Okay, I'm back. I got into Proust through this book in particular, translated by Lydia Davis. And I want to talk about this. This is the most incredible translation that my eyes have ever beheld. And I looked into Lydia Davis's background a little bit, and she has a background in poetry, which makes sense. So I read this book literally cover to cover in one sitting. I could not put it down. It completely just absorbed me and took me away to another dimension. And I knew that In Search of Lost Time was a large work, but after picking this up, I was really excited to get into it further. And then I realized that the other books were done by other translators. And though they obviously all worked together and collaborated, sampling the other translators' work after reading Lydia Davis's, it just did not hold up for me. But also because Lydia Davis's translation is so amazing and so immersive, and there's a feel to it, I was very hesitant to try one of the more original translations, which is the Modern Classic one, which is done by basically two translators, C.K. Scott Moncrief and Terence Kilmartin, and revised by D.J. Enright. So there's more cohesiveness throughout the volume because you have set translators working on this absolutely together, and that eventually is what sold me on continuing Proust with this series rather than trying to get into the Penguin series after Lydia Davis. I've had pretty much a year's time apart from Lydia Davis's translation, so I think it's enough space for me to have at least a blank canvas about Proust. So hopefully next year I can get into this, but I am going to definitely start from Swan's Way again as well. Okay, so that was a very abstract and piecemeal vlog, but that's what I have so far today, and then tomorrow I'm gonna add in my clip for my writing session, and that'll be it for this vlog. For this session, I wrote 23 words, and that is a wrap for this vlog. Happy Thanksgiving. I will see you in the next one.